Good afternoon, I'm Leila Masimova and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Air India plane bound for London crashes on takeoff at Ahmedabad airport. The US is partially evacuating embassy staff from Iraq amid rising tensions in the Middle East. Dozens have died in flooding in South Africa, with the death toll expected to rise. To breaking news first, Air India plane has crashed shortly after takeoff. The aircraft, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, was travelling from Ahmedabad in India to London's Gatwick Airport. The plane is believed to have had up to 240 passengers and crew on board. Thick smoke could be seen rising from the crash site in Gujarat state, visible from far away. Firefighters and medical teams quickly arrived at the scene as the crash happened just minutes after takeoff. It raises questions about a possible technical problem. So far, there is no official information about the number of deaths or injuries. Overnight, Ukraine's Kharkiv was once again struck by Shahed drones. 11 hit the city, injuring 17 people, including at least 4 children, with serious damage to schools, homes, vehicles and infrastructure.
Russian drones attacked Kharkiv overnight, injuring at least 17 people, including 4 children. The city mayor says there were 11 strikes which hit the city, with a 12th that didn't detonate.
Kharkiv is under attack yet again. These were Shahed drones. 12 drones hit 3 districts. Fortunately, one of the Shaheds did not explode. We have serious damages of residential buildings.
Residential areas, educational institutions, kindergartens and infrastructure were hit by shelling. Dozens of cars were damaged, windows in schools and houses were broken.
Our dog is very sensitive to explosions. When the shooting started, the dog woke us up. We heard an incoming hum, then there was an explosion. Everything started falling down and there was a fire outside.
This follows the previous night's 9-minute assault that killed 3 people and injured more than 60 others. The drones targeted residential neighbourhoods, damaging homes, schools and vehicles and sparking fires. Ukrainian officials condemned the attacks as deliberate targeting of civilians and called on the international community to increase pressure on Russia to stop the violence. Previously, Moscow has always denied targeting civilians.
Leaders from across Southeast Europe have traveled to the Ukrainian port city of Odessa on Wednesday, a city repeatedly targeted by Russian missile strikes in a show of unity with Ukraine.
Слово має президент України Володимир Зеленський.
Welcome everybody.
For the first time, leaders from across Southeast Europe gathered in war-scarred Odessa to send a unified message. Ukraine is not alone. And for Serbian President Alexander Vučić, it was his first ever visit since Russia's full-scale invasion began in 2022. Leaders from 12 countries reaffirmed their support for Ukraine's sovereignty and European future.
Odessa is a very important city for all of us, and not just a symbol of southern Ukraine. It's a crossroads between northern and southern Europe, so between the Balkans and the Caucasus, and between European stability and the threats to undermine it. And Odessa has always been a gateway, and today it stands as a gateway to our shared security.
The leaders signed a joint declaration which demands Russia's full withdrawal, an end to hostilities and peace. It also urges the international community to stop all forms of aid to Moscow's war effort. But Vučić stood apart. While reaffirming Serbia's respect for Ukraine's territorial integrity and offering to help with post-war recovery, he did not sign the declaration, objecting to the call for sanctions on Russia. Belgrade has, however, condemned Moscow's policies in the United Nations and expressed support for Ukraine.
Serbia will always remain very faithful to UN Charter, international public law, which includes our support to territorial integrity to UN-recognized countries.
All eyes now on whether the summit will deliver more than just symbolism and bring Ukraine any closer to peace.
German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has made an announced visit to Kyiv. He's set to meet with Ukrainian officials to discuss continued military support from Germany as well as potential industrial cooperation. Germany is the second largest supporter of Ukraine after the United States, having provided over 40 billion euros in aid so far. Questions about the future of US support have increased pressure on Europe to take greater responsibility. Pistorius' visit has caused concern in Moscow. Russia has repeatedly accused the West of prolonging the conflict by supplying weapons to Ukraine. US President Donald Trump's decision to deploy troops to Los Angeles has ignited political and public backlash as protests over immigration raids continue.
Large crowds gathered again on Wednesday evening in downtown Los Angeles for a peaceful protest that later spilled into the city's streets. Carrying banners, posters and flags, demonstrators chanted slogans and listened to speeches before marching in unison through nearby streets.
Are you ready to stay in the streets? Yeah! I want to say to each and every one of you, you are not alone. The world is watching Los Angeles.
Wednesday marked the 6th consecutive day of protests in Los Angeles over President Donald Trump's immigration raids. While largely peaceful, some demonstrations have seen violence. Officials say the Marines and National Guard deployed at the city are tasked with protecting federal personnel and property during immigration and customs enforcement raids and related protests. Asked about reports of protests spreading to 17 other US cities, President Trump pushed back, focusing instead on the situation in Los Angeles.
I can tell you that what we have is a situation in Los Angeles that was caused by gross incompetence. They didn't have the police to handle it. The police were asking us to come in. They were very late. We had to go in to save a lot of ICE officers, as you know, who were held up. They were holed up in a building, and they were being attacked. And the military went in, the National Guard went in and got them. The police weren't able, unfortunately, to move fast enough, but we moved fast enough. And while we were there, we stayed there, and we stopped tremendous destruction and death.
Meanwhile, federal prosecutors in Los Angeles have filed criminal charges against 2 protesters accused of throwing Molotov cocktails during earlier demonstrations.
We are looking at hundreds of people. We have video, we have FBI collecting video, we are collecting body cam, we're collecting social media, we're collecting everything. And we're going to take our time, we're going to identify people. They think the mask is saving them, it's not saving them.
The demonstrations began on Friday in Los Angeles and have mostly remained peaceful, concentrated within a few downtown blocks. However, confrontations with law enforcement have grown increasingly tense since the military deployment. Trump has vowed to step up deportations and bolster ICE operations, setting a daily goal of 3,000 migrant arrests, a move critics say targets vulnerable communities and fuels public unrest.
President Trump has expressed willingness to extend the 8th of July negotiation deadline for completing trade talks with countries, as he expressed content over the outcome of the US-China talks earlier this week.
United States President Donald Trump has expressed satisfaction over the trade agreement reached with China. This comes as officials from both countries met in London earlier in the week, as both sides seek to de-escalate trade tensions. The talks focused on critical economic issues, including U.S. access to Chinese rare earth minerals and magnets, and China's access to U.S. technology. The U.S. president has also indicated that he would be willing to extend an 8th of July deadline for completing trade talks with countries before higher U.S. tariffs take effect, citing progress in negotiations with some 15 countries.
Would you be willing to extend the deadline for trade talks with these countries?
I would, but I don't think we're going to have that necessity. We made a great deal with China. We're very happy with it. We have everything we need, and we're going to do very well with it, and hopefully they are too. But we're dealing with Japan, we're dealing with South Korea, we're dealing with a lot of them. We're dealing with about 15 countries, but as you know, we have about 150 plus, and you can't do that. So we're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, to countries, telling them what the deal is, like I did with EU.
Meanwhile, Germany has welcomed the China-US agreement and hopes negotiations between the United States and the European Union can progress in a similar way.
I expressly welcome it. This is not at the expense of Europe. Rather, it is another conflict that has been resolved. I expressly welcome that. And I very much hope that we will also succeed in reducing and, if possible, eliminating the trade conflicts with the Americans in a similar way.
The US and China have been engaged in an economic standoff after Trump announced sweeping tariffs on imports from a number of countries earlier this year, with China being the hardest hit. The Asian country responded with retaliatory levies. The proposal from the London talks still needs the approval from both leaders before it can be implemented.
The United States is partially evacuating embassy staff from Iraq amid rising tensions in the Middle East. The move follows warnings that Israel could soon launch a military operation against Iran, a development that officials fear may trigger retaliatory strikes on American targets in the region. Oil prices jumped more than 4%, while the Pentagon says Iran is edging closer to developing a nuclear weapon, a claim Iran denies. Military families across the Gulf are also being offered a voluntary departure as Washington braces for possible evacuation. President Donald Trump has urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza and stop talk of attacking Iran. The two spoke by phone earlier this week as the US pushes for a regional ceasefire and nuclear talks with Tehran. This comes at a time when Washington does no longer appear committed to a two-state solution, with Mike Huckabee, US ambassador to Israel, having earlier stated that the administration does not pursue the goal of an independent Palestinian state. And if such a state one day will come into being, it will be carved out of a Muslim country. To discuss what this means for the war and US-Israel relations, we're joined by Imam Marwan Gil from Ahmadiyya community in Argentina. Great to have you with us.
A pleasure being with you again.
So President Trump has told Prime Minister Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza and stop talk of attacking Iran. What does this direct message reveal about their current relationship?
I mean, it's for me personally not very optimistic, these merely statements, because if you go and analyze it, now it's almost 2 years into the war in Gaza. We are speaking about 20 months. And even since the President Trump has been elected as a president, since 6 months have passed away. And still we are at the phase of negotiation. We are still in the phase of talking, of asking other countries, other world leaders are urging, criticizing. But at the end, it's all verbal rhetoric. Whilst you and me, we are talking, people on the other side in Gaza are dying. They are being killed. And it's like on images, on almost a live timeline, we can see it. And no one has excused that he's not aware of it. So that's for me the saddest part, which really breaks up your heart. And you don't understand our world leaders, that why it's taking them so long. We are speaking about almost 20 months into the war, and innocent people are dying every day. Those zones who are declared as safe zones, those people are being killed. We are speaking about children. You can't take children as a synonymous for terrorist or combatants. And whilst this is happening, still, sadly, our world leaders are on the verbal rhetoric of asking, urging, declarations, but there are no actions. So I think whilst we don't convert these verbal rhetoric into action, it's a really pessimistic state.
And Israel says there has been progress in ceasefire talks. Do you think Trump's call will accelerate those efforts or complicate them?
I really hope that, be it President Trump, obviously he's one of the key figures, or US, but also other world leaders from the Western countries who consider themselves allies or friends of Israel. And also I would call up and ask also all Muslim countries to be united, have one strong stand, and bring an end to the war. For us, for me as the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, our world leader, the spiritual head, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, since the beginning of the war, we had a very clear pattern. Where for us, the first step is that we need a permanent ceasefire, because the loss of every innocent life is one more stone and obstacle in achieving the higher goal, which is peace and the reconciliation or a harmonious coexistence. In our case as Muslims, our Holy Scripture teaches us that killing one innocent life as if you're killing all humanity. So there's no justification at all for killing innocent people in Gaza, especially not women and children. Islam, which literally means peace, is that clear and gives us very high moral teachings and principles. It says that even in a legitimate warfare, you are not enabled or entitled to kill civilians. And on the same way, I think the goal to liberate the hostages, I think also this requires a permanent ceasefire. We see in the past, all or the majority of the hostages who were released was whilst the time frame of negotiations and ceasefire. And I think that's why it's very essential and urgent at that time that we implement all the international laws, we implement the regulations, and this verbal rhetoric is converted into our actual actions and deeds.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Pakistan has announced it's increasing military spending by 20% just weeks after a short armed conflict with neighboring India. Our correspondent Tamim Bahiz has more details from Peshawar.
Pakistan is shifting its economic priorities sharply, boosting military spending by 20% following last month's deadly border clash with India. In its 2025 and 2026 federal budget, the government has allocated nearly $9 billion for defense, up from around $7.5 billion last year, despite slashing overall federal spending by 7% to $62 billion. The shift follows the most serious confrontation between the nuclear-armed neighbors in nearly 3 decades. The fighting, triggered by an Islamist attack on Hindu tourists in Indian-controlled Kashmir, escalated into 4 days of cross-border strikes involving missiles, drones and artillery. India accused Pakistan of backing the militants, an allegation Islamabad denies. Pakistan is also trying to meet tough conditions under its IMF loan program while facing new economic uncertainty, including the threat of US import tariffs, critical given America is Pakistan's largest export market. The government projects 4.2% growth, 7.5% inflation and a 3.9% budget deficit. But with rising regional tensions and economic headwinds, those targets may be hard to hit. As military spending climbs, Pakistan faces growing pressure to balance defense with economic recovery. Tamim Bahiz in Peshawar, Pakistan for A News.
At least 49 people have died in severe flooding in South Africa's Eastern Cape, including several school children. Homes have been destroyed, schools damaged, and rescue teams are still searching for those missing.
Torrential rain and heavy snow have devastated South Africa's Eastern Cape province, leaving at least 49 people dead, including 4 school children.
4 learners are still missing, that are still being looked for. Our rescue teams are on the ground. The rest of deceased people are citizens of different ages. Search and recovery operations are continuing across all affected areas, particularly within the OR Tambo District Municipality.
A bus was discovered abandoned on a riverbank near Mthatha, with several children still unaccounted for, as rescue teams continue to search the area for survivors. Across the province, homes have been destroyed and hundreds left displaced. Residents now face a humanitarian crisis amid the worsening winter weather.
If my child had not been crying, it would have been worse. We are heavy sleepers. If he hadn't cried, we would have not woken up. His cries sprung me to action because I couldn't understand why even his pacifier could not make him stop crying, and that's what helped me see what was happening. When I stepped outside, all the houses around us had been ruined and submerged. We were the only ones alive.
The floodwater woke me up in the morning, between 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. The water pushed the door, the water rushed into the house, moving the furniture around. The fridge, the TV and gas stove were all swept away. I couldn't grab any of these things, so I just had to save myself.
More than 100 schools have been damaged across 2 provinces, and nearly 500,000 homes left without power. President Cyril Ramaphosa is calling for calm and unity. As recovery continues, people are bracing themselves for more severe weather ahead.
Azerbaijani Air Force pilots concluded a set of training flights. The pilots performed takeoffs and landings as well as the complex flying and combat maneuvers at low and medium altitudes. The exercises aim to improve their combat skills. Turkey will export 48 Khan fighter jets to Indonesia in its largest defense deal yet. The agreement signed in Jakarta will see the jets being delivered over the next 10 years, with technology transfer included. Khan is a 5th-generation fighter developed by Turkish Aerospace Industries. Recently, during a defense expo in Jakarta, President Erdogan announced that Turkey will export 48 of its Khan fighter jets to Indonesia. It is a first international deal for the still developing aircraft. So we're joined now by Onur Erim, President of Dragman Strategies. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So President Erdogan called this deal a milestone for Turkey's defense industry. What does it say about Turkey's growing role as a global arms exporter?
Yes, this is actually probably historically the biggest technology transfer in the Turkish, not only in the defense industry, but in the Turkish industry in general. Of course, Turkey has been quite successful in the recent few years in defense industry, in technological side of the defense, and especially in the aeronautical part. As you know, the Turkish indigenously made drones have been quite successful around the globe, and now Turkey is gearing up for the next level. Which is to be able to produce and successfully market the manned fighter jets. Now, I think one of the most important things is that Turkey's success in developing such a product is also it should be well noted. Turkey's success in the export deal to Indonesia, and there's actually some very credible reports that there are at least 2 or maybe 3 more major deals to be signed or to be declared in the very near future, also for the Khan fighter jet is coming up. But I think another very important point here is just like the United States has been doing for years, just like United Kingdom has been doing for years, and just like partially France, Germany, and Italy had been doing for many years. Turkey is probably becoming the sixth nation in the history of actually being able to sign a successful export deal on a still developing product. Now, this happens in two ways. Number one, of course, the buyer needs to be convinced that this is a good item for their inventory. But secondly, this also shows the trust that the world market shows to the Turkish defense, Turkish aeronautical industry, on a promissory note, so to speak, that for a product to purchase that is not fully finished in development yet. It's not out of the assembly lines yet. So I think this is a very, very good news for Turkey, for all the Turkic nations, for placing the technology, the industry in a much different level, ahead of a lot of people, a lot of countries that are in this race and have been in this race many years more than Turkey has been. So in many ways, this is a very great news. I hope it inspires more success to come, not just for Turkey, but for all the Turkic nations.
And a couple of more points, if I may. How significant is the joint production aspect of this deal? And more than anything else, why is it so central to Turkey's vision to involve local capabilities of its partners in the production process?
It is very important. As there are countless examples, even United Kingdom, even powerhouses like financial and defense technology powerhouses like United Kingdom, France, United States have been doing for years. The world is, as you know, to put it simply, is becoming one single village, so to speak. So cooperation, partnership, sharing technology, and co-production is now undeniably the only way to go in attacking on such endeavors like multi-billion-dollar projects like the fighter jet. So that is also another reflex that Turkey and specifically the Turkish defense industry is going to start getting on learning and experiencing how to hold joint ventures, how to hold joint co-production with different countries, with different industries of those countries, and I think this is a must, as we have seen. America's United States financial power is, of course, uncomparable to Turkey, and so is their defense technology. So if they are even seeing the need to do this, I think it is safe to say it's the only way to go, especially in this day and age. So that's another actually good factor that Turkey is following the world trend on how these things should be handled. And the experience out of this will also probably equip Turkey with different levels of experience in doing international business in this industry.
Thanks for being with us today. The Russian foreign minister has accused the European Union mission in Armenia of spying on Yerevan's neighbours. The ministry spokesperson said the staff of the EU mission are spying on countries neighbouring Armenia, adding that they do not report to Yerevan or contribute to regional stability. The ministry also criticised what it called NATO's influence in the South Caucasus, saying it brings no security and only fuels regional tensions. In Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan, the 14th General Assembly of the Parliamentary Assembly of Turkic State, Turkpa, brought together high-level representatives of the Turkic world. Turkish Parliament Speaker Numan Kurtulmuş delivered strong remarks on global realignment, regional cooperation and Turkpa's evolving role in multipolar future.
The 14th General Assembly of Turkpa convened under the chairmanship of Azerbaijan's Parliament Speaker Sahiba Gafarova, with Kazakhstan hosting the session and assuming the rotating presidency. In his speech, Turkish Grand National Assembly Speaker Numan Kurtulmuş framed the gathering within a changing global order.
The bipolar world order has already faded into history, and the unipolar system, despite all its claims, has proven unsustainable.
Kurtulmuş said the emerging multipolar structure made cooperation among Turkic states more vital than ever.
If we want to revive our civilizational march, which has been slowed down or paused for various reasons, we must walk together toward common goals, without leaving a single member of our extended family behind.
Calling the Turkic world a rising strategic force, Kurtulmuş highlighted the region's population and geopolitical leverage. He also voiced support for broadening TÜRKPA's membership.
We sincerely wish for Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan to join as full members as soon as possible. And we believe that the active participation of observer members like Hungary and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus will further strengthen our unity.
The Turkish speaker described TÜRKPA as not just a parliamentary body, but a political engine for integration and peace. Following the session, the rotating chairmanship officially passed from Azerbaijan to Kazakhstan, while the Secretary General post was transferred from Turkey to Azerbaijan.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.